Hey everybody, you are now tuned into the Blackout, shining a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture. Blacked out by the majority on Afro Vibes Radio, the #1 online internet radio station, with your girl, Tequila. Today's special guest is humanitarian, advocate for women, and founder of Phenomenal Women, Miss Myra Voorhees.
Thank you so much.
Hope I said that correctly.
You did.
Thank you so much for coming to my show and just allowing me to highlight your Black excellence and your organization, all the amazing things that you're doing. So just to start right off, please introduce yourself and give us some background into who the lovely Miss Myra Voorhees is.
All right, my name is Myra Voorhees, and I just am so excited to be here. But as I was kind of sharing a little bit earlier, I have a huge family. Both of my parents are from Nigeria, so I am first generation American. And so just being in the city of Houston is just amazing because there's just such a eclectic and a variety of people here. And so I wanted to start Phenomenal Woman because I knew that as women, we have a voice and our voice matters. And so I knew that this would be an opportunity to just allow women to share their stories in a way that we can be empowered, to be inspired, and as well, of course, be healed, you know?
Absolutely. And so, of course, me doing my own personal research, I was able to read up on your story and some of the ways that you're helping women in the community share theirs as well. And so here, like I told you, we're very transparent, so be free to be open. But just for yourself, why did you actually choose to be transparent with Phenomenal Women?
Yes. So those people that know me always say I'm very private or reserved. I'm still outgoing, but I can be very private about serious matters. And so I know I was asked to be one of the speakers for a women's empowerment event, and this was my first time actually sharing my story of, experiencing sexual abuse and, being raped. And I said that in the presence of my mom, my husband, and two of my close cousins. And I just remember when I said that in front of them, they were just kind of looking at me, and it was almost in disbelief. Of course, I had told my husband already, as well as my mom, but those were really the only ones. And so I was in a room filled with women and also some men, because, men do support women empowerment. And that was a huge deal because that's something that I kept in for so many years. And I knew that if I had, this thing that I kept from other people, even my extended family, how many more stories were there going to be for other women around the world who could also, be encouraged by other people's stories?
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, you come from a big family. You have brothers. For them, I know they probably taught you so much, were your protectors. What response did you get to what you shared? What was their reaction?
I think a lot of people first were very shocked because they didn't expect it because everybody always says I'm so tough. And I believe that, yes, I'm tough, but I believe in the moments of weakness, there's still strength in that. And I believe when I told my brothers and just the men in my family, because it's very male-dominated in my family, they were surprised, but also saddened too, because they also see themselves as protectors. And it was, maybe in the back of their mind, they might have said, well, what did I not do to protect my sister or my daughter or, my niece? But that's something that's beyond their control. I think everything happens for a reason, and you're either, going to sink or swim. And so I'm happy that it did happen and that I was able to overcome it because, like I said, I think there's strength in what you go through.
And I'm just so glad that you brought up that, especially with men, because like you said, they do want to be our protectors. They do want to, provide and please and do all those amazing things, but they're not invincible and they can't do it all. And unfortunately, like you said, things happen. But I think as women, we were made to be strong.
Yes.
In so many ways. We're emotional, but we're strong. We take on so much. We give life.
Yes.
And sometimes we're the last to live life, past our husbands. And so we're made to take on a lot of burdens and really help the world. And so for me personally, I like that you shared your story because I've dealt with, being raped and sexual abuse as well growing up as a child. And I know for myself, I was very reserved and cut off. People didn't understand why I wouldn't want to talk or would be so shy around men or whatever the case may be, but it was because I wasn't comfortable in my skin and I didn't know how to communicate that those things had happened.
Wow.
Even though that was an open dialogue in my house, you can say whatever, but I think I felt something was wrong with me because I allowed it to happen. That's how I thought my whole childhood. I allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
So who am I to say something about it? And so just for you sharing your story, what impact did it make on your mental health after you were able to release that?
Honestly, I guess similar to you, I kept it in, you know what I mean? But for me, it was more so if I didn't talk about it, then it didn't exist. And so I think as people in the black community, we deal with mental health and just healing a little bit different than other races. And so I think for me, it just gave me that freedom that I needed. And I felt very light. I felt very free. And so I'm grateful that I did that because that's weights, that's things that I don't have to carry with me anymore. Like you said, as women, we're like the pillars of our community. We carry on so much, but we also need help,
Yeah, absolutely. And so how have you allowed your journey to help you overcome, conquer, and give back to those that share a testimony such as yours?
Whew. I just allow people to have a platform. I think there's no one that's more important than the next person. I think there's so many unique and beautiful women that just have so much, great experience. I remember there was a woman in the Boston area who, also reached out to me and wanted me to pray for her because her son passed away due to a car accident. Was a drunk driver. And so I just remember thinking, like, how can I even help this woman? But the fact that she reached out to me, I knew the first thing I needed to do was to be praying and to be fasting for her. And so I believe that as we connect with so many people from around the world and just get to, meet each other, there's a strength in that. And I think there's power in being able to share things. We don't have to be superwoman all the time. I think even superwomen need breaks.
So how did the whole entire Phenomenal Women brand actually come about?
When you have like that little nagging thought in your head and you're just like, what is this? Like, I don't understand why it keeps repeating itself. Yeah. And I knew it was God, but I was just so stubborn. I get that from my mama, by the way. But I feel like God was telling me to do it and I didn't want to do it because I'm just private. I'm reserved. And I just felt like if I were to start opening up some of those, discussions in those chapters, I felt a little bit like I would be vulnerable and exposed. And the more and more as I'm sharing and hearing other women too, because there's so much encouragement from also listening to people, I'm understanding that this needed to happen, and it only happened because of God and this whole organization. God is always going to be at the center.
Absolutely. And so, of course, here, we celebrate Black excellence. We celebrate Black people across the African diaspora. Yeah. Do you believe women, especially Black women, are affected internally by circumstances caused by some men within their own communities?
Yeah, definitely. I think, in fact, every race is affected by, men or some type of challenges. But as Black women, I believe that there is like this new momentum going where I feel like Black people in general are understanding that we need to support and uplift each other. Hopefully there's going to be less and less discussion of negative stereotypes of our Black men and of our Black woman, and we're understanding that there's power in us, just not only being Black people but also just in human race. As we understand our differences, there's still going to be strength in that, but we can only do that through support, and we have to vocalize that. It could be in different ways. If a man sees a woman with kids and she's trying to struggling with her groceries, there's nothing from you to just say, hey, excuse me, ma'am, can I help you with those groceries? Or if there's a young brother that we see maybe walking around from basketball practice, there's nothing for us to stop and say, hey, sweetheart, do you need a ride? So I think it's a two-way street. Men need us just as much as we need them.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because sometimes I feel like there's this whole, well, Black women do this or Black men do that. There's this gender race war going on.
Yeah.
But you have people like Common who shared his story recently of going through the same thing that women go through with sexual abuse. And we have more in common than we have that are indifferent. And I think if we took the time, like you said, to vocalize it, it'll be a more understanding. But I think as women, we have a better platform at being able to be vocal about it versus black men.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need to kind of embrace them and let them know that it's okay to cry, it's okay to be vulnerable. You're not what has happened to you.
Yeah.
And some black men feel that they are, and they don't know what to identify with. And so
that's a good point.
Yeah, and I hate that there's this resentment on both ends. Do you think that's something that can be repaired through an organization like yours?
I think so too. You know, when I was talking to my husband, I said, in the future, what I see for Phenomenal Woman is that I also do want to have, you know, like a sister company where I can have something that caters to men, because just like you just said, like with Common sharing his experience, and even I think it was Terry Crews and other people that are sharing it, you know, at first, initially, like, you know, when we were little kids, people may have even laughed at a situation like, oh, what man lets... No, like, I think now we're starting to be more mature, not as ignorant, and understanding that things can happen, and when they do, we really do need to seek a professional, because that is another part of it. So in the future, I do hope to have, like, mentorships for young men in ways that I can honor men, because sometimes I do believe that there's not enough love poured into them. They just are kind of thrown into that role as, you know, men, and have to be tough and have to be strong, but they can cry too. That doesn't make you less of a man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, more back on your organization, Phenomenal Women. Tell us more about its mission and some of the programs that you actually offer.
Yes, so the mission, like I stated, is really like a platform. So it allows women to share their stories in a way to empower other women. So I've had women from across the country, like Jamaica, you know, or out of state, like New York and Jersey, and et cetera. And so these women have this opportunity to share what they're doing, and also what type of challenge or struggle that they may have had to overcome. And for me, I think that's just so encouraging that these women have this boldness about them, because oftentimes, you know, they don't know me from the person across the street, but they feel this close, like, relationship with me, and I feel like that can only come from God, that they have that willingness to even do that. And so I'm just really grateful of the experience that these women are doing those things. And some of the programs that we have is scholarships, because a lot of times we always say, you know, there's certain things that we need in our community, but why not be a part of helping change that community? And so one thing that I was always adamant about, because I grew up from a family that wasn't really well off, and so I remember in high school I had to, like, talk to my counselor, and I literally applied to hundreds and thousands of scholarships. And it was because of my, you know, determination and my tenacity to say, like, hey, this is what I need, because I knew with my mom and my dad with 6 children, that was going to be, you know, darn near impossible for them to help us. And so I applied to different things, and thank God I was fortunate enough to have a full ride scholarship. But some people are not able to do that, and so I wanted to at least support some you know, women or young girls, really, because they're high school seniors, have that opportunity to get support. And sometimes that's the best support you need, is financially, especially when you're,
beautiful,
you know, embarking in something new.
Especially. And so what does the name Phenomenal Women represent for you?
Ooh, Phenomenal Woman to me represents the everyday woman, because, like I said, some people see a celebrity and they say, oh, she's a phenomenal woman because this and that, or certain accolades. But I believe that every woman is phenomenal in the way that they're made. I think there's a beauty that each person has. I remember one lady said, what we have is a superpower, and that superpower is our uniqueness. And I believe that there's no one like you, even your twin. Mm-hmm. And so to me, as women, that's our superpower. That's what makes us phenomenal, is that there's no one like us. Yeah. So yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I want to be able to talk more about your organization or your platform, Phenomenal Women, but we got to go to a quick break.
All right.
So when we return, we will continue our show. But until then, you guys are listening to The Blackout, shining a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture on Afro Vibes Radio with your girl, Tequila. Hey everybody, you are now tuned back into the Blackout, shining a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture on Afro Vibes Radio with your girl, Tequila. And we are currently still in the studio with the lovely Miss Myra Voorhees. Make sure I say that right every time. You know, she got to add that Reese on the end. And she's a lovely founder of Phenomenal Women, as I just mentioned. And before we left off, we were talking about your mission and goals and what the name represents for you. And one of the things that I also noticed on your website is that you said you reach out to both believers and non-believers.
Yeah.
So why did you feel the need to basically touch both areas?
Well, I believe, like I said, every woman is phenomenal in their own right because of the uniqueness that we embody. I wanted to reach out to both non-believers and believers because I feel that every woman still has a story. And sometimes, even if you may not believe in Christ, that doesn't mean that he doesn't exist, even in your triumphs and your victories, and also, you know, even in your sufferings. And so I didn't want to present an organization that was going to limit anyone from being able to share their stories as a woman. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I did it. And I feel like I said, there's still going to be God even in the interviews. You know, we're still going to talk about God.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now I know me growing up, I was definitely in a Christian household, you know, went to church sometimes several days out the week.
You were one of those, huh?
Yeah, my dad is a minister. My grandfather was a minister. So it's like I grew up around that. But now that I've become older, I always say I do feel more spiritual than I am religious because I've learned religion doesn't necessarily... It's not necessarily a representation of what you believe. You know what I'm saying? And with that being said, sometimes I feel like the church does more condemnation than they do, I'm not going to say practice forgiveness, but being more welcoming. You know, sometimes there's a standard to how you can walk into this church. There's a standard on what you can believe in or what you do. And do you feel like there is some condemnation there, and that may be a reason why some people may be pushed out of their faith?
You know what? Whenever I used to have any conversations with people that were atheists or agnostic, it was typically around the lines of, if God does exist, then why does certain things or X, Y, and Z happen? My biggest thing, anytime I'm talking to someone that's a non-believer, I always just like to listen, because oftentimes they don't really get an opportunity to share their voice before someone just kind of hits them over the head with a Bible. And so I think I immediately get their attention because I'm actually receptive to listening to them. Even if I don't necessarily believe in their beliefs, I still want to hear them out just as a human, as a person. And so typically that kind of gives them a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more welcoming with me, because I also believe, like you, to be someone that is very spiritual. And I believe that we can profess that we are Christians or whatever denomination that we embark on. But what really matters is the life that we live. Because there's a lot of people that have a lot of head knowledge. I mean, there are people in the Bible, the Pharisees, who knew a lot. But those people didn't go to heaven. And so I believe that God is really looking for people that are going to move and shake. But you're going to have to do that through the way and how you treat people. Including non-believers, you know?
And I do think that some people, when they question that, you know, why would God allow these things to happen? But even like when you look in the Bible or any book for that reason, there's always some type of trial and tribulation that happens with it. And I'm not sure if it's a matter of showing God, you know, what sacrifices you're willing to make, or if it's just nature. You know what I'm saying? It's just something that helps build you. Because I know personally, I used to kind of question it too, like, dang, I'm going to church, I'm praying to you, and these things are still happening to me. What did I do wrong? And sometimes it's not for that. Sometimes God is using you to get to the next person who may not be strong enough to get to that situation. I ain't here to preach on that, you know.
Hold on. Like, y'all gonna start passing the offering plate.
But it's like that. Sometimes it's how God wants to use you. You may not see it in the moment, but like I feel about you, God is using you to share your story, to be transparent. Because it's a woman out there that probably feel like don't nobody understand what she going through. And she don't even realize it's like a million other women that actually do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, some people are so are so taken back, because you could literally be going to work with someone who's literally going through hell, and you never know, just because they never said anything, or just maybe because they,
Keeping a smile on their
keeping a
face.
smile on their face. I remember on Twitter, like maybe a couple of months ago, someone was, what's the word, trolling, and they were saying like, "Oh, God doesn't exist," and this and that, and going back to what I said earlier, if He exists, and why do you have to go through suffering and this and that? And I said, I just left a funeral like 2 days ago, and I said, and just because I left a funeral doesn't mean that God still isn't present in that. I think oftentimes we want to only give God shouts, during our times of joy and happiness. But there's just so much goodness, even in our sufferings. There's growth. And kind of how you said it, like what you go through is another person's, how to.
Exactly,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so I know I may have asked you this earlier, but how is it allowing those women to share their stories become such a major element to what phenomenal women represent?
I really feel those stories, those testimonies is really like the heart. It's the heartbeat of the organization, because those women are releasing so much, whether it's childhood trauma, whether these women are going through a health scare, divorce, not being able to bear children. There's just so many things that these women are exposing and allowing themselves to be vulnerable. And like I said, I'm just such in awe of these people, because it takes a certain kind of woman to have that kind of boldness. And there are certain people that are listening in, that are going through those same, situations, that are also now feeling like, man, God, I thought I was the only one. I thought you frowned upon me as I was going through the situation. And now I'm hearing so-and-so going through the same thing. And if she can do it, shoot, I can do it as well.
Absolutely. And I think that one thing that we do when we're young is we keep people at who they used to be.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of accepting them for who they are.
Yeah.
And just for the women out there that's listening, it's okay to say that you've been through those types of things. It's okay to say, hey, I wasn't perfect. I made a mistake, or I wasn't making the right decisions, because like you said, it brings you to who you are today, and somebody needs to hear that. And on the other flip side, you got to allow people to grow and change. They're not meant to stay the same.
Exactly.
They may not believe in God today, but that don't mean tomorrow they won't. It's based off of circumstances, and I think an organization like yours, it opens up and broadens the light of, these are the things that people go through, and these are the outcomes.
Exactly.
It is something that you can overcome. It is a challenge, but it's always for the betterment of who you're going to become.
Amen.
And so with that being said, how do you feel like phenomenal women have helped inspire, encourage, and empower women? And what have you gained from for yourself, just hearing all those different stories?
I learned to continue to trust God more and more, because like I said, I was ignoring Him for years, because this isn't what I want to do. Like, I'm such a I kind of call myself like an extrovert introvert at the same time.
I understand. I'm a walking contradiction.
You know what I mean? And so for me, I'm more so behind the scenes kind of a person. And so to be in the spotlight, or to be seen and be vulnerable, it is like such a huge leap of faith that I had to do. But because of that, because of me trusting God, I had to remember that it's not about me. It's about women that I may never, ever meet. And they are able to now be empowered, encouraged, and even those that are maybe non-believers, that might be their opportunity, that open door for them to say, hey, God, I don't know if you really exist, but it worked out for so-and-so, and I think maybe it could work out for me too. And I'm happy that, like I said, I took that leap of faith. It's still a challenge, though. I'm not going to act like it's like, easy sailing. But I'm still grateful, and I'm still empowered just to being able to hear these women and their testimonies every day.
And do you have any advice for the young women out there that want to create safe spaces such as these to help the women that are around them that may be afraid to be an entrepreneur or to found something in their own name?
Yes. The best thing to do is just to do it. And I know that sounds so simple, but it really is the truth. A lot of people said, well, your background, you kind of know a little bit about technology and like photography and all that kind of stuff, but still being in front of a lens and speaking in front of people, that was still something new to me. I voluntold my husband to be the video person, and that's something he didn't want to do, you know.
Voluntold.
I was like, baby, please. And we kind of just set up shop. And so everything was kind of from scratch. I've always just been a person who just never allowed my circumstance to determine what my future was going to be. And so I said, well, if God, you know, gave me this seed, if God is telling me this, and one thing I know about God is he ain't going to fail me. So I just met God where he met me, and he just superseded everything that I needed. And so for anybody, whether it's a platform, an organization, whether it is baking cookies, just do it. You'll be surprised how many people are rooting for you silently and also gonna step up and help you out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on our show and just sharing your platform with us and just helping inspire women all over the world. And before you go, just let our audience know how they can find you on your website and also connect with you via social media.
Yes, you can definitely follow me on all social media platforms. It is phenomenalwoman_7 on Instagram. I'm on Twitter, as well as you can also send me an email at phenomenalwomaninChrist@gmail.com. Definitely would love to connect with you. Send me some feedback, and let's just help each other change the world.
And thank you again so much for coming on my show. And we just honor and highlight you for all your Black excellence in the community.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you all for tuning into The Blackout, where we always shine a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture with your girl Tequila on Afro Vibes Radio. Make sure to check out our Facebook and Instagram pages at The Blackout AVR. And to stay up to date on our previous discussions and future events, please visit Afro Vibes Facebook and Instagram at Afro Vibes Radio, Twitter at Afro Vibes Radio with an S, and lastly, listen to us online at www.afrovibesradio.com or simply download the Afro Vibes Radio app on the Apple or Google Play Store.